I want to move on now to the royals because this week Prince William, he's been copping a lot of backlash for his statement on the Gaza-Hamas war. He, of course, acknowledged the terrible human cost of the conflict that has seen too many killed, and he called for the release of the remaining hostages. Now, look, this is the strongest response to the war by a senior royal, Emily, but he's had to do some damage control because royal aides have had to clarify that he's not calling for a two-state solution or for a ceasefire. Was it a poor move?
Well, this is the problem. His statement was quite vague, which left it very much open to interpretation. And Israel, their spokesperson, came back and said, of course, we want to stop the fighting like you do, but of course, there are conditions to that. I personally think that he perhaps should not have released such a statement. It opens him up to accusations of political bias, political meddling. It's very important that our future king is not seen to meddle in what is very important constitutionally for him not to be political. I personally believe this was a misstep from our future king. And also, if he comments on this ongoing conflict, which of course is hugely controversial, hugely contentious, opens up huge amounts of emotion from across the political spectrum, across the world. Indeed, does he then comment on every ongoing conflict? I think this puts him in a difficult position.
That's a very good point, and I'm sure he meant well by it, but it certainly hasn't been well received by no means. Now, the King has revealed he was reduced to tears by the many well wishes and messages of support that he received, of course, following his cancer diagnosis. What do you make of the reaction?
Well, it's quite interesting because, of course, we heard that Prince Harry was going to be talking to Good Morning America about the King's cancer diagnosis. And I don't know if you saw, but he looked to me like he was very uncomfortable answering questions about the King because, of course, he only had a meeting with him for reportedly 45 minutes. If that, very strained relations. But it's good to see that, of course, the King does seem to be in decent spirits, in good spirits. He's very keen to get back to his duties, which is wonderful. But of course, we've got the Princess Catherine, too, who's been in hospital for a rather long time.
Now, speaking of Prince Harry, there are rumours he and Meghan are heading in separate directions, suggesting that they each want a career separate from this nightmare Sussex brand. Let's be honest, it's been an absolute nightmare. Now, Meghan was announced as a new host of a little-known podcast company called Lemonada Media, while Harry, as you said, gave that interview to Good Morning America solo. So why are they divvying up their working lives, do you think?
Well, it's very interesting because they controversially updated their website to sussex.com. And now Prince Harry calls himself a humanitarian, a military veteran, a mental health advocate, and an environmental campaigner. Now, Meghan calls herself a feminist and champion of human rights and gender equity. So clearly they're attempting to lean into their particular areas of interest, always modest, into their particular areas of interest to sort of carve out separate identities. Now, we've heard for a while that perhaps they're heading in different directions. Perhaps there's a little rift in terms of where their goals are. But clearly what they're doing is very much under the banner of their titles, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. That is deeply controversial in this country, whether they should be able to use the royal crest and the royal family for their own commercial gain. But I do wonder whether there is so much interest in them as individuals or whether the interest is solely in what they can tell us about the royal family.
Well, I just wonder also if the interest has waned. I mean, now they're having to give themselves self-titles, for goodness sake. Oh, look, I mean, it's always one thing after another with these two. Emily Carver, thank you so much for joining us this evening.